How do you feel about you? How do you talk about yourself when nobody's around? When you're alone, do you feel like you're in good company? Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about self-love, why it's important, and how we can practice it in a healthy way. Welcome back to the Goodness Engine, where I make doing your good deed for the day easier than ever by pledging to donate any money generated by this channel. So just by watching to the end, you're doing your good deed for the day, but if you want to maximize your impact, be sure to subscribe and share. I want to walk through a little thought experiment. Imagine you're sitting alone in a movie theater, right up top. The lights go down and you hear the projector click on behind you. Suddenly, the screen comes alive and you're watching your own life as a movie. You, of course, are the main character. All your friends and family come on and off screen. As an observer, you watch and you judge the decisions of the other characters. It's only natural. But before much time has passed, you start to develop beliefs about the character of you. While you're sitting there in the theater, all alone, you start yelling out at the screen. And then you realize that the main character on screen is reacting to what you're saying. It's almost like you're directing the movie, but you have control over one character, yourself. You scream at them, telling them that they aren't enough, belittling them, maybe saying that they should be embarrassed of themselves, dashing away their confidence and their hopes and their dreams. How do you think that the performance will play out on screen? Will that character become dull and hopeless? Will they feel trapped? Or would they be motivated to make more of themselves, but at the cost of constant stress and anxiety? Now, imagine the person who loves you the most in your life sits right next to you in the theater, and suddenly they have the reins. They get to yell out, and they get to direct your character based on their thoughts and their beliefs towards you. How do you think that would change the story? What if your dog was able to whisper their feelings about you in your head? What if the Dalai Lama or Mother Teresa or Mr. Rogers got their turn? And how would you talk to the people you love about themselves if you were in their theater, if you were in their mind? I'm hitting you over the head with this analogy a little bit, but I think it illustrates a few important points. Number one, you cannot avoid self-talk. You can't be unaffected by it. You can't repress it. That judgment, good or bad, is always there, and it's by far the biggest motivator in our lives. We become so attached to our own identities and what a person like us should be doing or is supposed to be. We bind ourselves up in a very restricted and narrow cage based on what everyone else is doing, and then we blame and shame ourselves when we can't adhere to whatever impossible standards we set. The second thing it points out is that we judge ourselves on behalf of those around us, oftentimes preemptively. In this analogy, you change the main character's behavior not based on what you as the observer think, but based on what you think the other characters might do and say in response. But remember, it's impossible to really know what others are thinking. Their context, their motivations, and all of the complicated intricacies of their worldview. The most we can ever really understand about anyone else is a complete picture. It can be almost surprising to realize that we rarely actually experience the judgment of other people. Instead, we assume what other people might think about us based on how we feel about ourselves in comparison. So that cage that we put ourselves into gets tighter, and we're forced to contort ourselves to fit inside or to cut pieces of us away entirely. That's how a lot of us lose our innocence and our creativity in early adolescence when we really start to care about what others think. Either that, or we become defensive against an argument nobody's actually making. But either way, it puts our own internal freedom at odds with the world around us. But those things don't have to be antithetical: our freedom, our creativity, our spontaneity, and our surroundings. I think the third thing this analogy really points out is how many of us view our true selves versus our egos. So who is the voice in our head? Is that who we really are? Is it just a part of us? We see the characters on screen, we see our self-images, our outward personas as something separate from us, something false, while our authentic selves sit somewhere totally private. But let me finish this thought experiment by offering a different perspective. I'm going to talk a bit about my personal beliefs here. Not to say that anybody else's beliefs are right or wrong, it's just to offer a perspective. So now there is no theater. Instead, there's a projector in the middle of empty space, and it's pointing right at you. The machine clicks on, and that beam of light hits your eyes. Suddenly, you can see that whole scene playing out. But there are no boundaries or edges to the screen because it's all happening inside your head. So the characters can move around freely. You realize that you're not a character, but you're just a point of view. You are the screen. Everything that plays out on the projector is cast into you. It becomes you intimately. It becomes a part of what you are. As the scene plays out, everything moves and changes, but you remain a still and unchanging and boundless place. You allow the movie ultimate freedom. As you take in everything that's happening, you still have your thoughts and your judgments, and they do shape the perception of the movie, but those things change as well. Any beliefs or expectations are also granted the freedom to change to fit the moment. I like this framing a bit better because it feels more accurate. Just replace the word projector with your senses, your sight, smell, taste, hearing, touch. Our senses are given information and they project them into our brain in the form of electrical impulses, and our brains reconstruct the world inside of ourselves. So really, everything that you can possibly experience is of your own creation. If your conscious awareness is like a blank space on which your life is projected, then everything you perceive is not a separate thing, but it is you. Even something as vast as the oceans or the furthest stars in the galaxy. If it touches you, it becomes you, because you're like a mirror that's just reflecting the world. So if we accept this premise, now what you are fundamentally is not a persona, but you are the essence of boundlessness and freedom. You know all that's happening very intimately because it occurs inside of you somewhere. In other words, you're all-knowing, you're omniscient. You have the power to shape and influence anything that's happening in this movie with your own thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs, and your actions. In other words, you're all-powerful or omnipotent. And then anything that's projected is also occurring within you. You're no longer seeing from the perspective of a moviegoer, but you're seeing as the screen itself. That means that wherever the scenes go, they remain in you somewhere. You're always the background. So in other words, you are everywhere, or you're omnipresent. Boundless, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. I've never been a particularly religious person. I was raised in Catholic school, but along the way I found that at the time it didn't really mesh with my worldview. So I took some interest in trying to learn about other religions and try to understand what other people thought and believed. In every religion I've found that has a singular God, they always describe it with those words. Omniscient, omnipresent, all-powerful, all-knowing, everywhere. Many of those religions talk about the peace of God that's within us. I know in Catholicism that's how they describe the soul. Some talk about how we are part and parcel to a larger supreme. I'm not interested in really debating anybody's beliefs. I don't think that's what this space is for, but I think it's worth noting that oftentimes they're a lot more similar than they are different, kind of like new flavors of the same drink. I personally like to describe God as just the unfolding of the universe, because I think that any persona that I were to impart on it would be as false as my own persona. I think what consciousness is just a piece of the universe coming to know itself. Whatever you believe, I think there's always value in asking yourself who you were before you accumulated those beliefs and those thoughts. It can be hard to view yourself the same way after, and it can be painful, but sometimes letting those things go can lead to a life of much more peace and freedom. So, how does this all tie back into self-love? Well, the question I asked before now has a new context. If whatever God or whatever creative force you believe in was in your head, what would they tell you about yourself? Would they be demeaning or belittling? Would they care for you in the same way that a parent cares for a newborn? Better yet, how would you treat it? Would you hold that God with awe and reverence? Would it deserve any less? And if what we're describing is that you are a piece of that, do you deserve any less? I think this all ties pretty beautifully into the theory of 9 pillars of wellness. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out the video linked in the description. But this idea of loving yourself, caring for yourself, is like the foundation to a well-lived life. All the things we talk about on this channel about health and wellness, you do them to show thanks and reverence to all the gifts that you've been given. You see others as a part of yourself, and you treat them with that same care. You see the world as a part of you, and you care for the environment. And that way, goodness is no longer a matter of selflessness. It's not a virtue, but it is an incredible selfishness in that you identify with the world around you and you want to make it the best it can be. It can be really hard keeping all these things in mind when life can feel like it's overshadowing your thoughts. Eventually, negative self-talk will always come back. So how do you change it when it does? Well, first, you need to recognize it. You need to call it out and bring it into the light. Judge it, see whether or not it's true or false. Make any adjustments you feel you need to make within yourself to align to be the person that you want to be, but do so on behalf of betterment, not as an escape from self-hatred. Second, recognize when you think others are judging you and try to determine if you're actually just judging yourself. If so, reject that and do some self-exploration to see where it's coming from. If others are judging you, don't give away your power. Know that you don't need to make a positive impression on everyone, but you can still use this as a chance to look at yourself and see what's worth changing, because nobody's perfect all the time. Third, always be self-reflective. This is more of a preventative measure, but just know that you always have the freedom to be completely fluid. Don't define yourself by anything and tie yourself down. What you're interested in today can change tomorrow. What you believe today may be different tomorrow. Anything that can't stand up to the best scrutiny isn't worth keeping. And when the world is changing every second, we may find that who we thought we were is no longer as useful to us. So I challenge you to say at least one good thing about yourself every day, or do more if you can. Start right now by telling me one thing you love about yourself in the comments. I might even make a compilation video of all the responses for like a little feel-good moment. As a quick housekeeping note, the moment of gratitude will now be uploaded as a YouTube short rather than being a section in these long-form videos. So thanks for tuning in today and doing your good deed. Remember that you can supercharge that good deed by subscribing, sharing, liking, and checking out any of my other videos. Go out in the world, love yourself, and know that you're more than you think you are. Bye.